everyone, my name is Luxeley and I want to thank you for choosing this Hunter guide. Yes, it's kind of long, but in the description you will find links where you could skip through, jump to a certain section that you have a lot of interest in, so it's very, very maneuverable, if that's actually a word. I'm going to break it down into sections. First, we're going to talk about PvP set bonuses. I'm going to throw in the PvE bonuses just for the hell of it. We're going to talk about Draenor perks, and we're going to talk about Mastery. So basically the stats and how to use them and how to set them up to your best advantage. Talents. There's really no set talents, although a few trees, a few tiers, yes, there are certain musts, but for the most part, they're situational. And I'm going to tell you what I feel most comfortable with and what I feel works in each particular scenario, meaning whether it's a BG or it's an RBG or arena. Glyphs. I have two mainstay glyphs. I never, and I mean never change them. The other third spot, I switch quite a bit depending on the comp I'm facing, whether it be RBGs or arena, the type of complexion that I see when I walk into a particular battleground, or whatever role it is that I'm playing, which is usually hanging around guarding a base. But that third slot, many different situations, many different useful glyphs. We're going to talk about that in the glyphs section. Pet buffs. Pets don't offer the CC that they used to back in MoP and any expansion prior to MoP. Blizzard took out all the pet CC. So pets are just a matter of which one you find the most affection for to bring out. And they're not necessarily there for anything but a buff. And we're going to talk about what each pet family offers as far as buffs. Make sure that you don't duplicate those buffs when you're in arena, when you're in RBG. You want to bring something useful to the table. In the last section, I'm going to talk about rotation. Rotation in PvP is very different than rotation in PvE. You're not looking to maximize damage as much as you're looking to create opportunities for damage. And you have to treat it as a priority system because there are going to be times where you're going to pop your defenses in the middle of your rotation. You're going to have to be forced to CC someone or you're going to be CC'd. So let's get to it. Marksman's Mastery is called sniper training. When you stand still for 3 seconds, 1, 2, 3, so you're going to be a sitting duck for 3 seconds, you gain sniper training for 6 seconds, which increases your damage, shot range, and critical strike damage by 4%. Sounds pretty good, right? Incorrect. Wrongo. This is the worst mastery, the dumbest mastery in the game for PvP. It's kind of like about as useful, I should say, as teaching a fish how to play a guitar. This is just useless. Yes, there is a strong RP aspect to this, but who cares? In PvP, you don't want to be standing still very long or very often. And yes, there is a way that you can mastery your mastery by standing still and using it to your advantage, but you're not going to create that opportunity many times for many different reasons. Those circumstances are just not going to align right for you in PvP. So I will go over how you can do that, but I'll go over that in the rotation section. Right about now, there's a very smart, logical question in your mind, and that is, why go with over BM in survival if you're not a really big fan of the mastery? And that's a good question, and I'll give you the answer. I struggled for a very long time, wavered back and forth. Do I make an or BM guy? BM, back and forth like a politician. And finally I decided on and here's the reason why. The pets are running rampant in WoD. Whether you're a warlock, a hunter, a DK, unholy DK, they have a mind of their own. They're like Bruce Willis searching for the next action film to star in on the other side of the map. And yes, you can micromanage your pet, but I'd rather focus on managing other things and not my pet, especially since Blizzard took away our CC that our pet can apply. So I'd rather not manage the pet at all, not worry about it, and too much damage is attributed to the pet for a BM hunter, so that's why I go with As far as survival, I was never a big fan of survival hunters. As you get into higher rating in arena and even RBGs, they will dispel your poisons, dispel your black arrow, and that kind of gives your damage something awful. Plus, It's very elusive damage. It's the kind of damage that creeps up on you, which can be used to your advantage, but I strongly prefer to see the damage being taken out as I do it. Next up, I'm going to talk about the Draenor perks, which you randomly receive one of these 4 perks at level 92, 94, 96, and 98. Enhanced Aim Shot. Your aim shot critical strikes grant you 20 focus. This strongly suggests you're going to stack crit, and I will go over in greater detail stat priority at the end of this segment, but I want to point out that there's something called Careful Aim that is an MM specialization that you receive at level 20 that increases your crit damage by 50%. That would be the crit damage of aim shot and steady shot. Increases the crit by 50% on targets above 80% health or while your rapid fire is active. This means that you can use crit to your advantage very, very often and get more damage and get more focus. Very, very useful. A great perk to have. Enhanced Camouflage, highly underrated. You heal for 3% of your maximum health every 1 second while camouflage is active. Absolutely amazing and huge in arena. As long as there are no dots on you, you can basically heal back to full. Of course, if you're a dwarf, you could just wipe the dots off you and do this. Amazing ability. Works very well in RBGs where you are probably going to be resigned to, 9 times out of 10, resigned to guarding a node. This can end up being very, very useful and being a lifesaver for you. Enhanced Kill Shot. Kill Shot can now be used on targets with 35% or less health. In theory, this sounds amazing. In application, not really the case. Here's the problem. If you have an itchy trigger finger and you're going to go to kill shot very aggressively like I often do, and as soon as that target hits 34% health, you hit kill shot once, you hit kill shot twice, and guess what? The target is now at 5% health and your kill shot is not going to reset. It's on cooldown and you don't have it. When a target's at 5 or 10% health, a lot of things can happen. They can get away, they can achieve an objective in a BG, or maybe get a lucky heal from a teammate. So I strongly recommend you be a little bit patient. You see a target hit below 35% health, pop in an aim shot, pop in a chimera shot if you have it, and then go to the kill shot. Because if you go at it right away, you're going to use it twice and the target's not going to go down 9 times out of 10. Trust me, I've made this mistake many times. Improved Focus increases your maximum focus by 20. This is pretty huge, especially when you use the talent Thrill of the Hunt, because that's going to proc based on using X amount of focus, and if you have more focus, you have a better chance to make that proc. So I strongly recommend you use that talent Thrill of the Hunt. Kind of gave that up before I got into the talents, but Improved Focus helps that proc a lot more because it's giving you, like I said, more focus. And now I'm going to go over the 2-set and the 4-set bonuses that you receive from your PvP gear. First, the 2-set bonus. When your freezing trap activates, you gain 50 focus. This can be really huge if you use it correctly and use it properly. And when you use this with a very specific rotation, when you incorporate your mastery into that rotation, which I'm going to go over in the rotation section, it's some pretty damn huge damage and a great opener. The problem is you can't use it very often, but I'll get to that a little bit later. One thing I want you guys to keep in mind is because your freezing trap is giving you 50 focus, you're going to be so focused on your freezing trap that you're going to neglect your ice trap. And in certain situations, you might want to be focused on using your ice trap. And just don't let that happen. Just don't think freezing trap plus 50 focus, freezing trap plus 50 focus. Don't neglect your ice trap. There are situations that does work out better for you, and you don't always have to maximize that 50 focus you get from the freezing trap. But when you do get it, it is pretty darn huge and a great perk to have. Your 4-set PvP bonus, Aim Shot, reduces the cooldown of rapid fire by 5 seconds. Pretty darn cool. Now, if you use Thrill of the Hunt, which is a talent I'm going to strongly recommend you use, that means that you're going to get off a solid 3, 4, maybe even 5 aim shots if you use rapid fire in sync with Thrill of the Hunt. That means you're taking 20 to 25 seconds off the cooldown of rapid fire so you can use it quicker again. And more importantly, keep in mind, as long as rapid fire is active, you are gaining an extra 50% crit. Huge. Rapid fire in sync with Thrill of the Hunt. It's going to take time off of rapid fire so you could use it again and give you extra crit. This is a no-brainer and a great perk to have. Just because I said I'd toss them up there, and it's better to know what they are just to be informative, because even though you can't use them, I don't know, in some way, maybe you just want to know what they are. Here are the 2 and the 4-piece bonuses for PvE Hunters. Here's their set bonuses. As you can see, everything is suggesting crit. Crit, 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 crit. That leads me into stat priorities. You can easily go with multi-strike like every other website will tell you to do. I'm going to tell you to go for crit. There is just too much benefit. Having rapid fire up, you're getting extra crit. Having openers above 80% health, extra crit. You're getting just so much extra crit across the board. I strongly suggest you maximize your greatest strength, which is crit. Other sites will tell you multi-strike. There's no wrong. You can't go wrong with multi-strike either. Other sites, a few handful of sites will say versatility. But the way I say it, the way I see it, crit, multi-strike, versatility, haste, and of course last and most certainly least, mastery. Once again, crit, multi-strike, versatility, haste, and mastery. I want to preface the talent part here with something that's also going to be prefaced with the glyph part, and that is, there's no musts. There's no you have to have this or you will fail. I'm not a believer in that. If that were true, that you have to have this talent or you have to have this glyph, the bottom line is we would just listen to what the pros say and we'd all be 3K rated. We all know that's just not going to happen in anybody's fantasy. But what we're going to do, we're going to pick these talents in what I feel most comfortable with, what I feel is most useful as a default talent, and how to maximize each one of these talents in certain scenarios. Because it's all a matter of what you're comfortable with and what you get the most out of. I've seen hunters maximize their gameplay with completely different talents and completely different glyphs. It's all a matter of what Eric Clapton used to say, it's in the way that you use it. Occasionally, there will be an absolute must, a no-brainer, but that's more the exception than the norm. I'm going to start out with the level 15 talents. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Chimera. This reduces the cooldown on disengage by 10 seconds and the cooldown of deterrence by 60 seconds. This is a pretty much absolute must if you're playing a survival hunter, because you can get Black Arrow, get your poisons on the target, and then you just have to live it. You just gotta survive. Double deterrence, having that deterrence on a shorter cooldown works really, really well with survival. With MM and BM, quite a different story. Not that this is a bad talent, but simply the other two I think you get a lot more leverage out of. Plus, on a personal level, this just has to do with me, and I know it's ironic because I play a hunter and a shadow priest the most. I despise defenses in the game where you lose offensive pressure completely, and deterrence is something where you lose offensive pressure completely, much like the shadow priest that I play hit dispersion, and guess what, you lose offense of pressure completely. Not the case if you're a BM hunter, but certainly the case if you're an MM hunter. I prefer the other two. Narrow escape. This basically locks someone down in a route for 8 seconds when you disengage within a certain radius. Absolutely huge against melee. If you're doing arena and you're up against a dual melee comp or 2 melee within a comp of 3s, or 4 melee in a comp of 5s, or it's stacked to the hilts in RBGs or regular BGs with melee, you might want to go with Narrow Escape. It's frustrating. Ask any of your local melee dudes, warriors, DKs, ferals, everything. Even ferals hate getting rooted. Even though they could shift out of it, they still hate it. The point is, it's strong against melee, not quite as strong against casters. I prefer post haste. Why? Because you get that speed boost. I have a passion for a run and gun style. I like to be on the move. I like to be difficult to catch. Difficult to catch means difficult to shadow step to, difficult to death grip, difficult to charge, moving target, fast moving target, makes you a lot more elusive. Plus, you also can remove your snares and roots by using post haste in a disengage. So you're not gonna be bound down too much, and when you're in a real big bind, you could use Master's Call. But this is gonna keep you free. This is gonna keep you running. Post haste is my preferred choice in 15. The level 30 talents are 3 crowd control abilities. The first one I want to talk about, Intimidation, which is basically a pet stun. There are 2 things that I like about this, 2 things that I don't like. First, I'm going to talk about what I like. It's useful against healers, ranged, and melee. The second thing that I do like is you kind of create the sitting duck element. In other words, you stun a target, usually you have range on them, and you could start doing some significant damage. It's a good situation for a hunter to be in. What I don't like is also twofold. One, that 1 minute cooldown is 15 seconds longer than the other 2 abilities. That's quite a bit. But the big thing I don't like about this is the fact that it comes from the pet, and pets are running rampant. They're doing their own thing, and makes it very, very difficult to micromanage, although it is possible. I prefer not to do it, and Intimidation is very contingent on pet positioning, and for your pet to get to that position means the opportunity is gone, lost, forget it. Next up, Wyvern Sting. Great ability, 45-second cooldown, basically puts the targets to sleep, gives them a little bit of a nap, takes them out of the equation. This is a very, very good talent because it's a ranged, reliable CC that can be used against many, many different classes. Healers, melee, ranged, doesn't necessarily matter. And there's not many classes that can counter this. Something like a Fear, for instance, which can be countered by pretty much every class in the game without using their trinket. Wyvern Sting doesn't have a lot of classes that can counter this. The bit of a problem with this is that it shares the same diminishing returns as your Ice Trap or Freezing Trap. And the point is, here's the deal. If you're going to DR yourself, it's a lot worse than DRing another player. If you're DRing another player, that means the 2 of you are working in tandem and probably focusing 2 times the damage on one target. If you're DRing yourself, most of the time it's one target, one person yourself focusing that target, not as much damage, not as much leverage in that situation. I think the best choice is Binding Shot. This ability works very well in tandem with Explosive Trap as well as Freezing Trap. You can set up a lot of CC, you can work line of sight angles against healers, against casters, and it is a headache to melee. Between the root and the stun that's applied, it is very, very effective against melee. The cooldown is rather reasonable, and overall, I think that this is your best default choice in the whole level 30 talent tier. The level 45 talents, Healing and Defenses. Going to start off with Exhilaration. What I don't like, 2-minute cooldown seems rather long. The second thing I don't like about it is once Blizzard implements battle fatigue in a patch during an expansion, whether it's 10 or 20 or 30% nerf to absorbs and heals, this is the kind of ability, a rather big heal all at once on a 2-minute cooldown that gets hit hardest, that gets nerfed in its effectiveness. Exhilaration also has a rather high cooldown of 2 minutes. I think it's kind of high compared to the kind of heals that are similar that plate classes have currently right now, not necessarily casters, but plate classes. What I do like about it is it's healing on demand. You get a nice jolt of heals when you need it most, and you can use it judiciously to get that burst of heals. Next up, going to talk about Iron Hawk, which essentially is a damage reduction of 10% across the board. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it really is a lot. And this is the kind of ability that gets a rather, how should I put it? indirect buff when Blizzard implements battle fatigue into a patch. This is a buff essentially because this suddenly becomes better than it was. But still, I think your best choice overall is Spirit Bond, even though this is getting nerfed by the battle fatigue's recent appearance. I still think Spirit Bond is the best. It is a constant heal. It makes you stronger against dot classes such as Boomkins, Affliction Locks, Shadow Priests. You're kind of negating their dots in some cases, especially as you're fully geared. So Spirit Bond is your overall best heal and best choice that has the most function at the level 45 talent tree. The level 60 talents pertain to focus management. There's 3 separate ways that you could go about this. I'm going to start off with Dire Beast, which is on a decent cooldown of 30 seconds. And what I like about this ability is the fact that you are adding offensive pressure while you're also increasing your focus, because as the pet does damage, you generate focus, which means it's an extra source of damage. This is probably your best choice for an MM hunter or for a survival hunter when he's on the defensive to pop a little bit of extra offensive pressure. But here's the problem. Pets are running rampant, and this is very contingent on whether or not the pet is in good position or whether the pet's being CC'd. That's why I kind of lean towards the other 2 abilities, Steady Focus. Steady Focus is something that you can handle all your focus regeneration with your steady shot. 2 steady shots in a row will increase your focus regen for a period of time, and it's pretty easy to keep this buff up, and this is your key to sustained damage. So if you want to focus on sustained damage, this is the choice that you take. If you want to focus on burst damage, your best choice is Thrill of the Hunt. There are so many abilities that work in sync with Thrill of the Hunt, and most importantly, your aim shot crits will refund you 20 focus. So if you get started on Thrill of the Hunt with quite a bit of focus to start, the reality is you could pop 4 or 5 aim shots in a row with a high chance to crit, especially if rapid fire is up, and it is a tremendous amount of burst, and it is your best choice. The downside of this is it doesn't always happen when you want it to or when you need it to. It's not something that you can manage as well as you can Steady Focus, but Thrill of the Hunt is still your overall best choice for burst damage, and you do have a better chance of managing those procs than you might have as a BM hunter or a survival hunter, just simply because it will proc based on focus used. Chimera Shot, Aim Shot, and Barrage are 3 abilities that use a fair amount of focus that have a good chance of proccing this. This will proc more often than you think it will, and therefore is your best choice for the level 60 talents. The level 75 talents provide you with a little bit of extra damage. We're going to start off with Blink Strike, which helps with that pet running rampant thing that's going on with hunters right now. It does help. It gives a lot more uptime for the pet on the target, but this makes a lot more sense if you are a survival or a BM hunter, not necessarily for an MM hunter. It's not that it's a bad talent, but you're getting more leverage out of it from BM, and you're getting more offensive pressure while you're deterring and going on defense as a survival hunter. So therefore, it's not that I don't like this ability. I think the other 2 abilities you get a lot more out of, particularly Stampede. Now, Stampede is a shadow of its former self. It's not as strong as it was back towards the end of MoP. However, that cooldown also isn't that great, 5 minutes. But this is a great ability if you're just playing a burst comp in 2s or 3s and you just want to get a lot of damage on a target, because they did up the uptime of Stampede quite a bit recently, and it's a little bit more effective from that standpoint. But you have to be aware of classes that have AoE CCs that can CC the Stampede at least the first wave, and that's something you have to be aware of, and I would suggest not using it against those classes. Your best choice, even though it recently got nerfed, is a Murder of Crows. This, used in sync with your kill shot, is absolutely huge, and you want to use it when the target is about 20% health. This way it basically will have a lot more impact, and you get a better chance for that Murder of Crows to reset, because that's the big thing. If a target is killed when Murder of Crows is active, The fact is, it's going to reset the ability. So this is a good ability to apply offensive pressure, to get a good closer down on a target, to take them out. And even though, like I said, it's been nerfed in the past, recently it's been nerfed, it's still a very, very strong ability and a great ability. I think it's your #1 choice, unless you really want to throw a lot of burst, a lot of quick burst in 2s or 3s. Stampede is your choice. The level 90 talents offer you a little bit of extra damage, and they also offer, at least 2 of the abilities offer some utility. Or actually, I could even say the 3rd one offers utility, and I'll explain why. First, I'm going to start off with Power Shot. Power Shot's not one of my favorites for 3 different reasons. 1, the cast time. 2, the cooldown is rather long, and 3, you can't cast this on the move. Therefore, targets, enemies, opponents, whatever you want to call those bad guys that are red, they can get out of range. It's not like a Chaos Bolt that as soon as you start casting it, you can get on the other side of the map and you'll still get hit by a Chaos Bolt. Power Shot doesn't work that way, so it's not as useful in that regard as the other 2 abilities. Glaive Toss offers you a nice slow. It's got a very short cooldown, and it's got a very low focus cost. And it does a fair amount of damage. Not as much as the other 2, but it does a fair amount of damage. I think there are better slows to use, such as Exotic Munitions and Concussive Shot, as well as your Freezing Trap if it's Glyph for the 70% slow after it wears off. Glaive Toss is a very, very good ability, don't get me wrong. It's probably your best choice against melee, heavy comps, or BGs. But I strongly prefer Barrage for a lot of different reasons. Even though the ability has been greatly nerfed, I like Barrage just simply because I think overall it does the best damage. It's on a ridiculously short cooldown of 60 seconds. And it makes a lot more sense for an MM hunter to use it because it can proc Thrill of the Hunt because it costs 60 focus. It's got a very good chance of proccing Thrill of the Hunt. That's what I mean by utility. Barrage offers that utility to proc Thrill of the Hunt more often than pretty much any other ability. It does a hell of a lot of damage, even though it's recently been nerfed. And the knock on Barrage is the fact that it can break all the CC in your line of sight. It can just break all CC possible. But Power Shot has the ability to do the same thing, and even Glaive Toss has the ability to do that. Not as much as Barrage, but it's not that Barrage is the only ability that breaks CC in this tier. The others do as well. It's just that Barrage will do it more often. But this, even though it's been nerfed, is your best choice, I think, because of the utility to proc Thrill of the Hunt, and mostly it does better damage than the other 2 abilities. Because keep in mind, you can use 2 Barrages in the same amount of time you use 1 Power Shot. And that is the main reason I go with Barrage. The level 100 talents offer you a little bit of damage and quite a bit of utility. I'm going to start off with Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf is big damage. However, you sacrifice, Roar of Sacrifice, Master's Call, even Spirit Bond to get that best possible heal in that tier. But the damage you get, the trade-off is very huge. I don't recommend Lone Wolf if you're doing 2s or 3s without a healer. Your survivability is tremendously gimped. However, I am going to produce another video on a Lone Wolf build that is relatively viable in RBGs and BGs, not in Arena, but stay tuned for that. You could favorite this video. Eventually, that video will be linked into the description. It's going to be coming soon, or you simply subscribe and you'll see it when it's posted. Next up, I'm going to talk about Focusing Shot. I actually like Focusing Shot. I think it does a tremendous amount of damage, and it does help with your focus generation quite a bit, and the animation is pretty cool. But what I don't like about it is you have to stand still. I've said it many times, I'm a strong advocate of a run and gun style for a hunter, circling your target just to create all kinds of havoc, and with Focusing Shot, you're not going to be able to do that. The last ability, Exotic Munitions, is the one that I choose 90% of the time. It offers you a little bit of damage with 2 abilities, and it also offers you a slow. I always opt for the slow because I don't want the damage abilities because they're going to force me to use a glyph spot to get that freezing trap that removes dots. So I go with the slow for Exotic Munitions. This is pretty much your standard choice across the board. You can go with Lone Wolf, like I said, but you sacrifice an absolutely tremendous amount of survivability by going Lone Wolf. I think exotic munitions is your best choice with the frosty, coldy thing that slows the target. That's the route you go 90% of the time, exotic munitions. Like I said at the start of the talent section, Glyphs talents, there's no absolute must way of doing this. It's all a matter of what you're comfortable with, what you can maximize. It's in the way that you use it and who you're playing with and the situation you're facing. So when I say something's a must, that's probably more the exception than the norm. But the two glyphs that I pick as mainstays are these two. The Glyph of Explosive Trap. This is highly underrated because it's just so much fun. People think you take it for the knockoffs, but the fact is, knockoffs, when used in sync with, say, Ice Trap or used in sync with your Binding Shot, really has a great way of putting players out of position, of creating all kinds of havoc. A lot of times you don't necessarily have to kill a healer. All you have to do is take them out of the equation by switching up their position, and Explosive Trap can do that. It's the best ability, in my opinion, in the game to help peel for your healers, and it's also the best ability, obviously, in the game to help peel for yourself. So Explosive Trap has a great amount of utility, and pretty much, even though I said nothing's a no-brainer, is a no-brainer for MM Hunters. And I'm going against what I said once again, because the Glyph of Chimera Shot is a must, especially if you're having trouble with survival and in surviving as an MM Hunter. This is an absolute must. That 2% heal is a game changer because you can use it very often. It's got a Chimera Shot has a very low cooldown, so you can use this quite a bit. This has saved my ass in many arena and many BGs where I've been in a 1v1, which I have a perfect clip where it shows how this saves me, literally, because I'm hesitant to show this clip because I'm mediocre at best in this clip. I'm in AV, and when I'm in AV, I'm probably not paying 100% attention because there's a 50-50 shot that you even get in any PvP in AV, but I have this hunter, BM Hunter, slightly outgeared, but he gets the drop on me and really does a tremendous amount of burst, and I'm in a hole, and this basically saves me. This basically turns the tides of the fight, as it often does, and has saved my ass many times in arena and in BGs. So I'll show you the clip, you'll see what I mean, even though it's me not at my best. And then I'm going to go over each of the other third slots that are situational and just who you're playing with that just makes sense for you to fill that third slot. But these two are my mainstays. The third glyph slot is situational, and the situation that you're going to use the Glyph of Solace is when you're playing with the dot class in competitive PvP, whether it be in RBG or Arena 2s or even 3s. Glyph of Solace is where you want to go, because every single class pretty much does dot damage. The only ones I could think of, if you're running in 2s with one of these types of partners, for example, Windwalker Monk, Frost Mage, Combat Rogue, another MM Hunter who doesn't do dot damage, in other words, he's not using exotic munitions for dot damage, or even a Fury Warrior, everybody else does some kind of dot damage. So when you're with everybody else that does dot damage, Glyph of Solace is your choice. It's a no-brainer. You need to make sure that that target stays on ice and stays frozen and stays out of the equation. The Glyph of Animal Bond I strongly suggest only in 2s or 3s. In a 2s or 3s arena where you're doing them with a healer who's either new to healing, undergeared, or flat out not that good, quite frankly. This will help them out quite a bit and add to your survival. Otherwise, there's better choices. But if you're with a healer who's weak or new, or simply undergeared, Glyph of Animal Bond is a very good choice. If you're not running with a dot class, I would strongly suggest you use a Glyph of Freezing Trap for that 70% slow, because it can be a game breaker, it can be a game changer. It's a game changing thing, just simply because 70% is a huge slow for 4 seconds, and that's enough to keep a healer out of position, because when a healer is CC'd, the first thing he's going to try to do is get himself back in position, and this is going to prevent him from doing it, so it's a great 1-2 punch. The Glyph of Black Ice you might want to use in 2s or 3s against melee. It's just going to give you that much more of an edge with an extra 50% movement speed, which will stack with post haste. And if you're just goofing around in skirmishes, well, can't use Rocket Boost in skirmishes, but you can use it in regular BGs. And believe it or not, the combination of post haste, Black Ice, and Rocket Boost, the engineering speed boost, all stacks. So it could give you an absolutely ridiculous amount of speed by using Black Ice if you just want to have some fun. It really, at least that's the way it was in MOP. I haven't really used it much in this X-Pack and WoD, but at the end of MOP, they all did stack. Now I want to send a Christmas gift and a big thank you to the Blizz developer who gave Hunters stealth in MOP. Thank you very much. Camouflage, this is probably the third glyph spot that I use most of the time, just for the sheer fun aspect of it. Camouflage, you could accomplish a lot. It's a huge utility. The downside of this is just something you need to be aware of. If you're doing 2s or 3s with a melee partner who tends to be very aggressive, like a paladin, a warrior, a death knight of some kind, they're going to get way ahead of you because you're coming out of the gate stealth with a 50% movement speed, and they're not aware of that, so you need to be aware of it because it could put you out of position, and he's going to be behind a pylon DPSing someone, and your DPS or peel ability will most likely be needed. But stealth in its own right offers a lot of utility. I don't have to go into all the ways. I think you guys know by now. This is probably a really, really good choice for your third slot. The Glyph of Master's Call has a tremendous amount of utility against Frost DKs. Yes, post-haste will free you up and keep you moving, but so will the Glyph of Master's Call help you that much more. Not only will it help you, but if you have a stay-at-home type healer that you're doing arena with, most likely we're talking a shaman or a paladin healer who aren't as mobile as the other healers, this really will help them quite a bit. So you got to think team-oriented and team aspect, and maybe in that case, if they're having trouble kiting, if they're having trouble getting away, Glyph of Master's Call would be a very good choice. The Glyph of Mirrored Blades comes into effect and is probably a must in 2s or 3s if you're facing big burst casters, such as a Boomkin, who, if he plans it right, can spam 4-star surges in a row at you, a Destruction Warlock who could pop a Chaos Bolt, a couple of Chaos Bolts at you and destroy you, or even an Arcane Mage. We're seeing a few of those pop in here or there when they have Arcane power-up, are very lethal. And this is where Glyph of Mirror Blades really comes into effect because it can turn the table on those kind of fights very quickly and very readily. The last glyph that I use for the third slot is situational as well, and that is if you're running with your burst, and I mean burst scenario. And I'm going to go over that in the rotation section, but this is a must for that because you get a huge amount of extra crit. Crit is your best friend as a MM Hunter, and this will help with the crit and keep the target where he needs to be kept, which is clueless and stuck in one spot. So Glyph of No Escape will work with that burst, but also, hey, it's a great way of turning the tides on a target that was just frozen. Now you have to burst them down. This extra crit will greatly help as well. Now I'm going to go over what each kind of pet brings to the table. You have 3 kinds of pets: cunning, ferocity, and tenacity. And I'm going to talk about the key ability that I think is best for PvP. Starting with Cunning, which is the pet that I use a solid 80% of the time. Roar of Sacrifice is going defensive and works very well in 2s or 3s in Arena. You can put it on yourself, you can put it on one of your partners, and more importantly, it even works in RBGs when you're guarding a node. It gives you that little extra survivability. 80% of the time, I default with a Cunning pet. Ferocity pets bring Heart of the Phoenix to the table. Problem with this, even though it's a great ability to instantly res your pet, it's on an 8-minute cooldown. I mean, in Arena, you're only going to probably need to do this once anyway, but the reality is the cast time to res your pet isn't as long as it used to be. This isn't as useful as it used to be. The last one has a time and a place in a certain scenario, and that is a tenacity pet. The charge is the only ability that a pet has in-game, hunter pet has in-game to actually throw out some kind of CC, and that is charge It's a 1-second stun. It's enough to stop a key heal. It's enough to stop a caster from doing some big damage all of a sudden. So it is very useful, but most of the time I prefer to go defensive with a Cunning Pet in Roar of Sacrifice. Next up, I'm going to talk about the family of pets, what particular buff they bring to the table, and each class and what buff they bring to the table. Give you a solid reference point so you don't duplicate buffs in Arena or in RPGs. Here's the good news. You're not forced to bring a Cunning, Tenacity, and Ferocity pet. You could switch out of those particular specs as you like at the beginning of any kind of instance PvP, whether it be Arena, RPGs, or even regular BGs. So essentially you could bring up to 5 pets. And that is what 5 pets you choose is very contingent, very contingent on what classes you like to PvP with in Arena, in 2s, 3s. The bottom line, I like to PvP in 2s with Feral Druid or some kind of Rogue. Those are my 2 favorites. So I essentially bring crit and versatility to the table as much as possible. If I'm with a Feral, I'm going to use versatility. If I'm with a Rogue, I'm probably going to focus on crit. But here is a reference point where you could see all the different buffs that each type of pet brings to the table and all the different buffs that each particular class brings to the table. So when you're choosing something, make sure that it benefits you and it benefits your partner, and it's something, obviously, gonna repeat it again, mutually beneficial. You're going to have 2 different priority systems or rotations. If the target is above 80% health, you want to start out with Aim Shot, Chimera Shot, and Barrage, simply because your whole goal here is to get that Thrill of the Hunt proc. When you get that proc, you want to follow it up with 2 steady shots to get your focus up a little bit, hit rapid fire, and then dump out all your focus with aim shots. Lots of damage once that hits. And there's a good chance when you add those 2 extra steady shots in, there's a very good chance that you're going to be able to pop 4 or 5 aim shots in a row. And rapid fire is going to help you get there faster and increase your crit. Absolutely huge. If your target is below 80% health, you want to lead in with Chimera Shot followed by Barrage and Aim Shot. Hopefully you're going to get a Thrill of the Hunt proc by then. You forego the 2 steady shots to get your focus up because your urgency here is to get the kill. Hit rapid fire and then aim shots if you get the proc. If you don't, then you probably have to dump some steady shots on the target. And of course, I'm going to throw in kill shot. You guys know when to use it. I said it earlier. You want to try to start using it at 25% health, even though MM allows you to use it at 35%. And last but not least, I'm going to talk about your burst sequence. Now this, you have to be glyphed and spec'd a certain way, very different way from what I suggested in the video, but I figured it's nice to have this if you want to try it out, so here it is. I want to say I can't take credit for this rotation. A friend of mine came up with it. He plays an MM Hunter, a dwarf. His name is Ice, but I have to say I recognize its feasibility and I recognize the fact that this is going to be a value added. Here's what you need. 2 glyphs, absolutely need them. Glyph of No Escape to give you 100% extra crit, and the Glyph of Camouflage, because this works a lot better when you're coming out of stealth, and your rate of effectiveness and success is going to go up huge if you do it from stealth. You start out with a Binding Shot, then you pop a Freezing Shot. Now you hit rapid fire and you wind up for a big power shot that's going to have a reduced cast time and a huge crit possibility. Then the rest of it is simply Chimera Shot and Aim Shot, and the target pretty much should be dead by the time you're done with your first or second aim shot, because then you're going to go to kill shot, dead target. It is absolutely huge, and it works extraordinarily well with a rogue or a feral druid, because especially a rogue, because a rogue can sap the other target and kind of help you to lock down the target that you're focusing. Folks, that'll wrap up my Hunter Guide, MM Hunter Guide. I appreciate you tuning in, and hopefully you learned something. And if you have any tips of your own you want to share, hey, by all means, put them in the comments section. Be sure to be subscribed for the upcoming Lone Wolf build, which has a couple of tricks in it, and a macro video that has a few other tricks. So thanks for watching. Thanks for playing. This is Luxley saying, whatever it is by you, morning, afternoon, or night, make it awesome. Luxley out.